Karma's a bitch.
Queen of Karma.
I was 6 when they told me my parents weren't my parents. They said we were all Thetans. We were ancient souls in young bodies, and that love was a distraction. I didn't understand the words, but I understood the cold in their voices, the cold in the room where they told me I'd be leaving with strangers. My mother's eyes were wet, but she didn't hug me. She didn't dare. Touch was weakness. They put me in a van with other children. No one spoke. We were told not to. The camp was a compound. We woke before the sun. We scrubbed floors, sorted files, cleaned toilets. We were told we were helping clear the planet. If we cried, we were punished. If we laughed, we were punished. Adults stood over us, their voices sharp, sometimes making comments about our bodies that made my skin feel wrong. We were drilled to keep our faces blank. No emotions, no reactions. We were vessels, empty, waiting to be filled with tech. At night, I lay in a narrow bed in a room with 7 others. I wanted my mother's voice. I wanted someone to tell me I was good. Instead, I was told I was out exchange and counter intention. When you are 6 and no one smiles at you, you start to believe you don't deserve smiles. You start to believe you are nothing but work. Sometimes the punishments weren't just words. If we moved too slow, hands would grab our arms hard enough to leave marks. If we made a mistake, we'd be made to stand for hours, staring at a wall until our legs shook. There were ethics handlings, long, hot rooms where adults shouted questions until you said what they wanted to hear. Sometimes they'd laugh when we cried. Sometimes they'd tell us we were dramatizing and to stop acting. I learned to make my face empty. I learned not to flinch when someone's voice got sharp. I learned that if an adult touched you in a way that made your stomach twist, you stayed still and silent, because speaking up only made it worse. I wasn't human. I was told our bodies were just meat. Bodies were temporary shells for the Thetan inside. That made it easier for them to treat us like objects. At night, I would pull the thin blanket over my head and pretend it was a shield. I would whisper to myself that one day I would be somewhere else, somewhere warm, somewhere safe. But when you're a child in a place like that, safe feels like a story someone else gets to live. This fictionalized account mirrors the lived experience of many former Scientology children, but I am not here to tell you a fictional story.
A former Scientology member with local ties is suing the church, claiming repeated abuse. According to the lawsuit, the girl lived at the spiritual headquarters in Clearwater from age 6 to 12 in the 1980s and early 90s. She claims she was forced to work long hours and was the victim of abusive rituals.
Well, I first left in 2008, and I did speak out about the church then, but you know, the book is really a good way to get the whole story out there. You know, sometimes the story becomes a little bit about Tom Cruise, which is, you know, is an important way to draw attention to it, but the book is a good way to have everything there. And, you know, also obviously the whole purpose is to raise awareness about what is, you know, not just some benign religion, but actually a destructive and abusive organization.
So you're 6 years old and you have your parents and these people that you probably look up to telling you that you are the reason that your parents are failing in business or their marriage isn't going well. What is that doing to your psychology as a 6-year-old?
So I was very confused by a lot of it because I just didn't even really understand what they were talking about. Like, I would be told that I was trying to ruin their business, trying to end their marriage, trying to cause harm to my family, trying to cause harm to Scientology. And I was made to confess to these things. But I also had this feeling of maybe I'm not conscious that I'm doing this. Maybe it's something I'm not aware of, and I don't get why I'm doing this or how I'm doing it, because I doubted myself, because it was over and over again that I'd be told this, when, you know, I wasn't trying to hurt anybody. I didn't have any evil intentions towards any of my family or even Scientology. Like, I didn't feel those things, but because they were having problems, the church has sort of two ways of looking at things. There's you've pulled in your own misfortunes, illness or pain and things like that. You've made that happen, or you're connected to somebody who is a suppressive person who is bringing that to your life, basically.
So that's just one picture, but my mom has to go out of her way to make sure she takes a bunch of pictures of, oh, and let's take one of talking to the plants.
This is the list of the confessional. I'm not trying to bum everybody out, but this pertains to my life a lot, as far as like, whoa, it makes me think of why I am the way I am. So here's starts the confessional, all the list of questions, another list of questions. This is for, oh, by the way, I need to show you one part of it, and the rest of the questions. So we're looking at 4 pages of a confessional for children. Look what it says. What does that say right there? Ages 6 to 12. 6 to 12, people.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is one of the most destructive aspects of the church, is its treatment of children and family. And yes, when I was 6, I was sent to what's called the ranch, which was for children of executives of the church's most dedicated order, called the Sea Org. And we were basically only allowed to see our parents once a week for a few hours on Sunday morning. I was there from when I was 6 until I was 12, and then from when I was 12 until I was 18, I only saw my mom twice, and I only saw my dad 4 times, and the majority of those times were for less than an hour.
It was kind of weird. It was like basically seances all day, because Dave Miscavige would say, you guys need to confess all your crimes. I want to know real crimes, not the paperclip. When you're in Scientology and you're being investigated or you're being asked for your crimes, some people are like, oh yeah, no, I stole a paperclip. And you're like, no, I don't want to know about paperclips. I want to know about like bodies. I want to know about like hard, like real stuff. Anyway, so David Miscavige would say, okay, by tomorrow, I'm going to come back here tomorrow night or whatever. You guys better have any you better have any crimes confessed, and I want lists. I want to have lists of them. And there'd be like maybe, let's say 50 people in this room, and nobody could leave. And they would just, what about that time you did this, and they'd all just be bickering and fighting and whatever. And then David Miscavige would come in the next day and he'd be like, oh, you guys didn't do anything, you know. And that's where the pie face thing came from. It was that whole era where he'd just be asking questions and everybody would just be like, you know, if you react to something he says, you're going to get in trouble. And if you answer something wrong, you're going to get in trouble. And if you answer it right and think that you're right, then you're going to get in trouble. So most people just evolved. It was an evolution where basically everybody just learned, if you just sit there and go and don't react, then you can't get in trouble. And then
I've been witness, and so has Mike, to people in Scientology they don't get raised with the word pedophile, child molester, molestation, rape. Those words are changed as cults do, as people who are being groomed do. They don't know these words. So oftentimes they're telling their story to us for the first time, talking to the police for the first time. And we've been witness to this off camera where they're telling the LAPD their story and they are in tears. This is 20, 30 years later. They're in tears when a police officer, someone other than us, are saying that was against the law. Yeah. That was rape. You were molested. I mean, the tears that happened to these people who are now mothers and fathers, it is heartbreaking to watch because they have not been acknowledged. And so I joke about the awards, but really it is so touching to us. I mean, I start crying to see how courageous. They know they're being acknowledged. Yeah.
They not only allege that they were raped and that the church encouraged them not to come forward, but then when they did come forward in 2016, they claim that they've been harassed continually. If somebody is, the victim of crime, they're made to believe that they're at fault for it.
At the ranch, we were run like a military organization. We had uniforms, we lived in dorms with 7 other girls, which was separated by a bathroom from 7 other girls, and we had birthing inspections, we had military close order drilling, we had uniform inspections. We spent 4 hours a day doing heavy manual labor, which was everything from rock hauling to digging trenches for irrigation. On Saturday we did labor the entire day. So we did 25 hours of heavy labor per week.
All signing billion-year contracts. There was like 30 children the first time when we were signing contracts to go in. It was like these, I'm not sure if it was like a prerequisite or they hadn't done it already for the babies that were in the ATA, which we'll get into, the Apollo Training Academy, which is basically just where they had the kindergarten and toddlers and all kinds of little children. So I'm not sure even if like maybe they even made us sign a contract when we were at the ATA or the CEO. I don't specifically remember that memory, but it's just crazy that like when somebody, even Jamie, oh my God, I should throw out his book, Child X. Go get Child X. But when Jamie Mustard is talking about all kinds of like just regular normal abuse at, in his childhood and the way that I can't even say childhood, and the way that he was raised, not properly or whatever, not raised. I guess raised could be badly raised. But there's so many details where I'm like, wait, what year was that? And who was doing what at that time? And
she describes Scientology as a toxic organisation and was particularly scathing about the treatment of children. Well, tonight a special Late Line investigation raises allegations that the church in Sydney was involved in covering up the sexual assault of an 11-year-old girl.
I mean, so many bad things happen from being held into rooms, being forced into doing confessions, from being separated from my husband, who at the time was my fiance, from being deprived of sleep, but, so many things that it's hard to get them all out in one breath. But the worst part, I believe, is actually the robbing of your education when you're a child and taking away your childhood and taking away from your parents, where you have no one to turn to, you have no one in your corner, and essentially brainwashing you from such a young age. I think that that's definitely the worst part.
Claire Headley was placed in the cadet org at age 4, seeing her mother only 2 hours a week. She later endured forced abortions under Sea Org policy and witnessed David Miscavige's physical and verbal abuse. Jamie Mustard recalls systemic destruction of empathy in the Sea Org, severe neglect, and emotional abuse that left lasting trauma. Johnny, raised in the Sea Org, describes being sent to a remote boarding school with 150 children, cut off from the outside world, working manual labor shifts, and being taught they were adults in young bodies. These accounts are consistent: separation from parents, deprivation of affection, indoctrination, and child labor. Psychologists call it attachment trauma. Survivors call it a hole that never fills. Children raised in high control groups like Scientology often grow into adults who struggle with trust, intimacy, and self-worth. Studies show that childhood emotional neglect and abuse are among the strongest predictors of depression, PTSD, and suicide risk later in life. While the Church of Scientology denies allegations of abuse, numerous former members, including those raised in the Sea Org, have publicly described being separated from parents at a young age, harsh manual labor for long hours, emotional and verbal abuse, pressure to suppress feelings, and individuality. Research on adverse childhood experiences, ACEs, shows that emotional neglect, abuse, and forced separation from caregivers are among the strongest predictors of depression, PTSD, and suicide risk later in life. The Journal of Trauma and Disassociation has found that survivors of coercive groups have significantly higher rates of suicidal ideation than the general population. While no central database tracks Scientology-specific suicide numbers, multiple cases have been documented. Whitney Mills, a high-ranking Scientologist, died by suicide in 2022 after allegedly being prevented from seeking mental health treatment. Her family's lawsuit claims the church brainwashed her into rejecting psychiatric care, misdiagnosed her, and left her in crisis. Former members and advocacy groups have reported other suicides linked to unresolved trauma from time in the church, though exact figures remain unverified. The pattern is clear. When mental health struggles are met with suppression instead of care, the risk of suicide rises sharply. Scientology's alleged abuse of children doesn't happen in a vacuum. It's built into the system. Former members and researchers describe a pattern: isolation from family. Children are placed in the Cadet Org or Sea Org facilities, often hundreds of miles from home. Redefinition of identity. Kids are told they are thetans, millions of years old, erasing the concept of childhood and parental bonds. Labor as indoctrination. Long hours of menial or physically demanding work are framed as contributing to the mission, normalizing exploitation. Emotional suppression. Any display of sadness, fear, or even joy is labeled out ethics and punished, teaching children to disconnect from their own feelings. Information control. No access to outside media, education filtered through Scientology doctrine, and constant monitoring of speech and behavior. Fear of punishment, ethics, interrogations, public shaming, and threats of disconnection from loved ones keep children compliant. When a child is told they are not allowed to love, to feel, or to be themselves, something inside them breaks. When that child grows up, the break doesn't heal on its own. It becomes depression. It becomes addiction. Sometimes it becomes the decision to end their life. If you are a parent, understand this. Groups like Scientology do not see your child as your child. They see them as a resource, a worker, a vessel. The moment you hand them over, you risk losing them, not just physically, but emotionally forever. The stories are harrowing. The data is clear. The damage is lifelong, but silence is what allows it to continue. When you strip a child of love, safety, and identity, you don't just harm them in the moment. You alter the course of their entire life. The Church of Scientology has been accused time and time again of doing exactly that. The question is not whether the damage is real. The question is whether we will stand by and let it happen to another generation. Are you listening?
If you did something bad, they would order, in this military style, the public beatings of children. And so they would make us all watch, they would drag a kid on stage and then order the parent to strip the kid in front of us and beat the kid in front of us. And I'll never get this image out of my head of this kid getting away from her mother. His clothes are off and she's hitting him all over because he's squirming and it's hard. And he runs to the side of this raise and there's an inner Navy member in a uniform, an adult, that drags him back to his mother and the beating continues.
All right, Jamie, where'd you grow up? Where are you from originally?
I'm originally from Los Angeles. On the day of my birth, I was driven from Westwood Medical Center, a nice part of LA, to a slum in downtown Los Angeles, a slum building on the outskirts of downtown LA in the Rampart Police District, where I was turned over to inner Navy members of Scientology. And that is where I would, in that slum office building is where I would spend the next 3 years of my life.
Do you remember any of it?
I actually have baby memories. I can remember, like, basically the first 3 years of my life was little to no human touch. There's no baby pictures of me. And we just sat in cribs in our own sick and our own feces all day, every day, and until we moved to the next tenement. It was a place with peeling paint, roaches, mice. It was just a hellhole.
And this is part of the Scientology
This was a nursery run by the inner Navy members, the core of Scientology. And one of my caretakers reached out to me about a year and a half ago, and I was able to confirm a lot of these baby memories. And she asked me if I had a particular memory, and I said, like, do you remember how they bathed you? And I said, no. She says, once a week they would line up the babies, 30 to 40 babies with 3 nannies, and they would take off your diaper, dip you in one bath, wipe off everything they could, and hand you to the next nanny who would put a fresh diaper on you. Then, without draining the water, they would put in the next baby. So for the first 3 years of my life, I was bathed weekly by being dipped in feces. And then I went back to sitting in my feces, staring up at the ceiling for 3 years. And my mother would come by periodically. You would think that it couldn't get any worse. It does. At 3 years old, we moved to a building on Melrose, a red brick building with no air conditioning. And it was a militaristic type environment, and I'm stuck into a dorm room with old industrial bunk beds, roaches, mice, and I'm put on the 3rd bunk because I can't fend for myself with hundreds of, like 100 and something other kids. I had constant dreams of waking up, falling, and then I would wake up on the floor. We were subject to military type musters. In the morning, they would line us up and make us account like in a military group, like Lord of the Flies. And there was just no one looking out for us. There was no one looking at our bodies. There were several kids that I know that were molested. One of them became someone that wanted to be a molester, and then he took his own life because he didn't want to do that to his wife and his kids. And I always wondered if that had not happened to him, would he have had that compulsion? I'm not apologizing for him, but he wasn't the only kid. So I've lost a lot of these kids that I grew up with to suicide and overdosing, drug overdoses. I've counted something like 5, and I just decided I wanted to stop counting.
It had become dangerous to have children on board, so children at that time were no longer being allowed on board. And women who became pregnant did not want to be sent off the ship, so they chose in some cases to have the abortions, and in some cases Hubbard ordered his aides to have abortions. We now move a little bit forward to the Fort Harrison Hotel, to 1975, 76, the 70s, and into the 80s. The nursery, the children's nursery, was a terrible place for children. It was never clean, it always smelled of urine. The babies were left crying in urine-soaked cribs, and there was one baby found dead that I know of personally. Judy Light, a very, very good friend of mine whose own baby was in that nursery, told me later on that she had seen more than one dead baby. Judy lives in Seattle.
How did they cover it up? Why didn't the police come in and investigate why those babies died? Babies that don't die every day. The babies were often left unattended
because there's always a shortage of staff.
I wasn't asking why are they dying, but why didn't the police investigate? I mean, those are deaths.
The police were never told about those deaths. I don't know how those little bodies were disposed of. And while I was in Scientology, I never chose to look into it.
And while I was in Scientology, I never chose to look into it.
And there were other children, back to the nursery, there were other children from anywhere from 3 to 9 years old, 10 years old, who, as punishment, and again, I don't know punishment for what, were made to pick lint off the carpet, you know, the little bits of papers and things that stick on the carpet, for hours each day, while they said, I'm glad to be in the Sea Organization, I'm glad to be in the Sea Organization, I'm glad to be in the Sea Organization.
I was about 13, and there was a place called the Mace Kingsley Ranch. It was in Palmdale, about 30 minutes outside of Los Angeles, and it was run by a man named Wally Hanks, who was OT7. He was like one of the highest level Scientologists. He was very well known and revered, and he used to do briefings to people on how to handle their children, and a lot of the children at the Mace Kingsley Ranch were considered problem children. Their parents had gone into the Sea Org and they wouldn't go, or their parents were in Scientology, they didn't want to be in Scientology, or for one reason or another they were considered a problem child. I never was sent there, but I had friends who were, and I went up to visit them a few times. Now, when I went up to visit them, I found out what happened was anyone who acted up, like a boy was found peeping in the girls' room, and just any time you did something wrong, you were paddled. Wally was a very big man, and he had a paddle, and all of us would sit around. This happened the first time I went up there to visit. Sit around on the sofa, and the person who was being paddled stood in the middle of the room, and Wally would paddle them with his paddle. It would make them cry, and then he would put a little notch on it for paddling them, and that was the punishment. In the evenings, he would build a bonfire and give all the girls and all the boys beer. I was 13 years old, 14, I think I was 13. Everyone had beer and got drunk. I think the first night or the second night I was up there, I was sitting next to him, and I had had a few beers, and so had he, and so had everyone else, and he put his hand on my shirt and down my bra and started feeling me. And it really scared me. And I asked my friend later, I said, what's Wally doing? Why did he do this? And she said, oh, don't worry, he just does that with the girls. That's just what he does, but don't worry about it.
This guy's running the school?
Yeah, he ran it. From what I know, he owned it, and he definitely ran it with his wife. Another night, he took us camping, and we went out and we had more beer, and we were camping, and once we'd all had a few drinks, he gave us guns to go practice shooting. So I sat in the dark with a flashlight and a gun, practiced shooting at like cans and thing after I'd had a few beers.
What kind of guns?
Just like handguns. Oh, and rifles. We did rifles earlier in the day before we drank, and then we did handguns in the evening. That one time that he put his hand on my shirt was the only time he did that to me, but later on, when I was in the Sea Organization, when I was the Director of Inspections and Reports, I came across some reports on him. He had been found out that he'd been doing these things, but he'd done a lot worse than what he'd done to me. He had really badly molested several girls.
How do you mean?
Like, felt down their pants and had them pee on his car or on someone's car. And just,
what do you mean, pee on the car?
He got off by seeing them pee on cars. Told them to pee on cars, and they would do it for him because they had to, or...
They might be drunk.
He got them drunk, had them pee on cars, felt them, and I don't know if he actually had intercourse. I don't remember if he actually had intercourse with anyone, but, you know, up to that point, really bad molesting.
What happened? What happened to him?
Well, because he was an OT7, they said they weren't going to declare him officially because it would be bad public relations for people to hear that an OT7 molested children and got declared. So they quietly ousted him from the church. They quietly said he's declared.
But did they report him to the authorities?
No, they never reported him. At least not to my knowledge. These reports said nothing about it. They said it was a handling. It's like he's been doing this, and what we're going to do is we're going to oust him, but we're not going to officially declare him. We're not going to tell people about it because it's bad public relations because he was an OT7.
What about the parents of the girls who were molested? Did they do anything about this?
I don't know about that. I don't know what happened. One of the girls was in the Sea Org with me and left, and another one of the girls is still a Scientologist. They're all still Scientologists.
You know, so there was definitely a disconnection of the parents being around and in the kids' lives. You can't pick up a phone and call them. You can't, you know, the Int Ranch phone was not an Int Ranch phone. There was no, like, we weren't thinking, oh, the phone is in the adult's office locked up with a code. So you pick up the phone and it will go dee, 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 until you put a code in, and then it'll go, okay, now dial the number you're trying to reach. So Everything's locked up. There's no way. There's no way to reach out or even begin to think, maybe I'm not in the best situation right now. There's no way to reach out to a family member. There's no way to reach out to a non-Scientologist, period. And that was the same thing for, libs, liberty. They call that liberty means you get a day off. You got approved by your executives or the executives in your organization, whether that's a gold base or whether that's Int Ranch and you're a cadet or in the governor's group. By the way, if you're in the governor's group, you wouldn't get any days off, any libs days or anything with parents or not. Didn't matter if they came and they got approved from their execs at the gold base or whatever, or an RTC, it doesn't matter. You're in the governor's group. Oh, it looks like Colleen is the only one who's going to be hanging out with dad on libs, my sister. Anyway, so
in order to have a day off, I had to get it approved by this person, and this person, and this person. That's 4 people. And they all had to sign off on the piece of paper and sign that it was approved for me to take that day off. Our statistics were measured week to week, and the week ended on Thursday at 2 o'clock. So basically we had the rest of Thursday to submit the request and Friday and Saturday to get it approved by all of these people. But technically, the way that the Scientology dispatch system works is that these people have at least 24 hours to answer a dispatch. So you kind of had to beg and plead people to do it quickly, more quickly than they were even required to by policy. And so you kind of also had to be in good with all of these people. All right, so when we did finally get approved for a day off, we didn't have a car. We didn't have any transportation, and our parents also did not have a day off. So basically the day off kind of consisted of us being at the ranch, and there was a room where we could watch movies, and whatever movies happened to be there, we would watch those. And usually it was the same movie over and over again, which sounds kind of crappy, but to be honest, at the time, it was like, if we could watch a movie at all, it was like a huge treat. And it basically consisted of wandering around the ranch, and there wasn't really anywhere to go or anything to do. And so it was just enjoying a day of not working or not having to do studies. And that's pretty much it.
all these are constantly. So another thing would be like brushing or playing with the horses. We were allowed to do that. All these, like, there, I will show some photos. I think I showed one earlier of the kids and the horses and being around these animals. But part of that was the animals need to be well cared and taken care of as much as you can without spending Scientology's money. So very low on the financial. But also because it looks good to have animals and these, you know, horses and the kids interacting with these animals to outsiders when they come onto the property and they see a well-kept and really nice cleaned property with these children who seem to be happy and smiling and curious and, you know, very attentive with communication and whatever they're being trained into acting and being. And then so I just lost my train of thought there. So, but you have these things, there's a certain mode, certain switch, certain thing. There's no way for the outside world to come in here and help these kids. There's no voice for the kids to come out. It's purposely being blocked by L. Ron Hubbard policies and then by the Scientologists and the Sea Org members that abide by those policies. We would go to see our parents would be about a 2-hour amount of time, whether that was going from the Int Ranch to the Gold Base or going from the Int Ranch to the Devonshire or to the Kirby or to one of the Sea Org designated apartment buildings. It would only be about a 2-hour span of time that we're hanging out with the parents, we're doing whatever. Oops, I just lost something. So being with the family or having family time, in all of the time we ever are hanging out with them, would be either on a Sunday morning for the 2 hours or 2 hours, on a Saturday night, the night before. It's not like we're spending the whole Sunday with them. Oh, it's not like once a week. It's if they catch the bus and they finish their job and their post and all the things they had to do before they were allowed to go see their kids. If they got that done, then they go and catch the one bus that's outside of the apartment of the Sea or dorm buildings that goes to the Int Ranch, drops all the adults off. They go do whatever, which is riding horses or my mom and dad knew I loved animals. So most of the pictures I'll be showing in the next episode or the next one will be of us, with the goats and with the animal. These are the only times we're having freedom. Pictures that you see were taken because it was a moment of joy. And if it wasn't a moment of joy, it was a moment of like deep concentration that had nothing to do with Scientology. It had to do with like an animal or, or an adventure or playing sports or physically making something or playing basketball with my dad and brother or whatever it was. Those were the moments of joy. And most of the time, my mom is still obsessed, like really loves photography. So she would be disappointed taking pictures of us if one of us were just like chill or like, okay, hurry up, take the picture. We want to go play. We only have this much time. And she'd be like, honey, you're not smiling. That's bad PR. You have to have good PR. We need, like my brother would joke sometimes and just be like frowning or something. And my mom would make a joke like, Jarrett, you ruined the photo. Come on, let's do it again. And she would laugh. But her intention was like, no, don't create any bad PR. This is for the family and the outside world. They need to see that we're having fun and that you guys are being productive and that you look joyful doing whatever you're doing. So yeah, that was that. Horses, blowing, bareback. I just have a bunch of random stuff here.
I'm Phil Anderson, and I'm the father of Laura Megan Anderson. Lara was born in the United States. She is an American citizen, and it's kind of ironic because we're Canadians, and so she's the one in our family that was an American citizen. And she was raised in LA here, and then she went to a private school within the church.
Totally forgot about a lot of this because it was so intense and my mind at the time was being forced to be on something else. We were being forced to pay attention. Okay, you're going to Clearwater. You better be prepared. You're joining the outside Sea Org. You guys are the future executives. You better not let us down. You're going, So when they announced, it was like 3 days, not even, maybe 2 days before I was all packed up, ready to go to Clearwater. I had all my SEC checks approved, everything. I was all, I had my clearance to go, to leave. And one of the other cadets told me, out of nowhere, and she wasn't supposed to tell me. She said, Lucy's dead. She said, come here, I have to tell you something. Lucy's dead. And I was like, what? And she was like, shh. And then she said, come here, let's go. Quick, because we don't have muster. Until once we saw 10, 15 minutes before muster. God, I was so mad. So we go running down because I'm like, what? And I'm like, still trying to process, Lucy's dead? What does that mean? And I even thought that, I was like, what, did Martin Habscheit, the German guy, shoot her? Because he did that. I'll tell you another time, but I just didn't know. And then we went down there in the greenhouse. The goats were supposed to have been on all those green, beautiful mountains, eating the grass and free ranging with the horses. But because everybody was so caught up in all the sec checking and the approval and closing up the ranch and getting everything done, the animals were just abandoned. And somebody didn't take them off of the rope in the greenhouses, and we walked up and the bones of the goats and her babies and everything were all eaten, and the heads were hanging from the poles because they had run the coyotes had eaten them in the night when they didn't get unleashed to freely roam. And that's what we came up to. And then the next thing I heard was, Megan, Kimberly, get back here. And it was an adult. I think it was like Casavius or Martin or somebody. And they said, get back here. We're handling this. And I think I yelled, you killed them. You should have let them go. They should have been off the rope. And so I go running back because they said, you need to go back. And there's this big buzz. Everybody's buzzing. Oh, what happened? And we're not allowed to say anything. The cadet, Kim's looking at me like, don't say anything. Like, you're not allowed to say anything. And we were just approved to be able to go, and that we were strong enough and adult enough to not have these crazy emotions, and that we were like all ready to go to flag. They announced and told me and my sister were approved to go to flag. And just in that moment they told me, knock off the bank. Do you need a session? We can get you a session if you need a session. But this is not how you handle this. You knock off the bank. They said one of the Sea Org executives said, "What, are you going to flag? They're not going to accept this behavior at flag." And I was like, no, sir. And I had to force myself to not think about it, not care. And then I did. I was so distracted with going to the new world and going to Clearwater and getting on the plane that I just had to forget about it all. Dad, so there's your answer to the goats. To Lucy, and that you got me a goat. I cannot get that image out of my head. And that's just one of it. We weren't allowed to use the microwave. We would have to get the adults to press start on the microwave. Little things are controlled. We weren't allowed to use the toaster. Only the adults were allowed toast because it would be too much work to make all the kids toast, I'm assuming. But yet we're capable enough to dig trenches and build greenhouses and scrub dumpsters with toothbrushes and scrape maggots out of the most nastiest shit and scrub toilets and and everything, yet we cannot press start on the microwave or have toast for breakfast because that's only for adults. Children, cadets, policy, and abuses. None of them make sense. L. Ron Hubbard writes a policy about spanking children and says the governess may spank or discipline the children as he or she sees at any time, at her or his free will. But yet, we're not children. We're governess now. So when does the policy apply and not apply? Like when it also says children do not get paid, which meant if you're in the governess group, you're under the governess, which means you're a child under the governess group. That's what they're trying to put it as. Like, if you're going to act like a child, we're going to treat you like a child under the governess, not like a child as a child would outside in the outside world. Yeah. So there was definitely a deep connection with the animals and food for me. I loved the animals at the ranch, and I also loved eating. And a lot of times I would be in trouble, or I would be, under watch or something like that. And the food restriction was like, oh, you're only getting this, or, the upset, the people who run the table or are doing well, they'll get first and you can have seconds, or you're in the governance group, so you're only getting these scraps after everybody else is fed. It wasn't about having good food or not. It was like, the food, even if it was good, was still controlled as to how much we got and when we were allowed to eat it. It wasn't just like, oh, there's an apple in the kitchen. Oh, I'm hungry. Let's, grab a snack. It's not like that. It's not like you're at a house, you're at your mom's house or at any kind of house where you're just like able to just eat and enjoy your life. It's everything has a portion, everything has a time to be eaten, when you eat it and when you don't eat it. If you're caught eating something off schedule, that's an over. You're then writing that up in ethics. Oh, I snuck granola from the bucket without asking the services secretary and put it in my pocket to hide it. That was the withhold. And now I'm running to muster and I'm eating it sneakily in the classroom, in the course room. And that's why I'm in ethics now. I'm in ethics trouble. I'm handling this because they caught me eating in the L. Ron Hubbard course room.
These are not all the children lost in Scientology. Many more voices need to be heard. It's time to fully shed a light on this abuse and to do something about it. Psychology calls it developmental trauma. Philosophy calls it a violation of human dignity. Sociology calls it a mechanism of control and survival for the group. And all three agree. The damage can echo for a lifetime. Removing children from parents isn't protection, it's coercive control. Cults replace parental bonds with loyalty to the group. Isolation ensures the child's only family is the cult. According to psychology, early separation rewires the brain. It breaks secure attachment, which can lead to lifelong trust issues. It stunts autonomy and decision-making, and it creates trauma symptoms such as anxiety, hypervigilance, and dissociation. Philosophy considers separation from parents a theft of personhood. It violates a child's right to self-determination. The indoctrination replaces free thought with obedience, and it creates moral harm. It blurs the line between right and wrong. Sociology considers this separation a strategy for control across generations. Children raised entirely in the group can't compare beliefs. This ensures loyalty and prevents outside influence, creating a situation where trauma passes from one generation to the next. The cost is damage that lasts a lifetime, emotional scars that never fully heal, difficulty forming healthy relationships, and creates a higher risk of depression, addiction, and suicide.
And as a young adult, he became one of the breakout stars of That 70s Show, which began in 1998 and ran for 8 seasons. It was in the middle of this hugely successful run that Masterson is accused of raping 3 women between 2001 and 2003 in his Hollywood Hills home. But it took years for the charges to be brought, as the 3 accusers were formerly members of the Church of Scientology. Masterson has denied all the accusations.
That 70s Show star, Danny Masterson, will spend 30 years in jail. A judge sentenced Masterson Thursday for raping 2 women more than 2 decades ago at his Hollywood Hills home. The once popular sitcom star was convicted 4 months ago on 2 of the 3 rape charges he faced. The 47-year-old was sentenced to 15 years to life for both convictions to be served consecutively, which equates to 30 years to life in prison.
Scientology's global headquarters is located in Los Angeles, California, in the United States. Independent estimates put active global membership at 25,000 to 50,000 people, with the lower end more likely. Numbers have declined since the 1990s, with growth mostly in retention of existing families rather than large-scale new recruitment. But new converts tend to be in their 20s to 40s, often drawn in through self-help courses or acting and modeling networks in Los Angeles. In 2024, Scientology promoted themselves at the Super Bowl. There's most likely a Scientology center in your city right now, treating families this way.
Hey everybody, welcome. I'm Natalie and this is Life After a Cult, the channel where we expose cult nonsense, laugh at the absurdities, and hopefully unbrainwash ourselves in the process. Okie dokie. Hey everybody. Thank you so much, moderators, for being here. I so appreciate it. And hello to everybody in the live chat. It's been a hot minute. Oh, I've missed all of you. We're going to get into a little bit of news and then I'm going to tell you about my week and how I survived it. There's a couple things that I want to talk about today and we're kind of going to go somewhat quickly. The ICE protests that are going on, of course, across the country, but I think kind of the focal point has been Los Angeles. While you're all coming in, big alohas to everybody. Hit that like button on your way in as well. Help us with that those notifications. I have been watching the LA ICE protests, and what's been so interesting to me too is many of the people that we've seen in doing the Scientology protests are now there, including Scientology Audit Streets LA, also has a channel, Film the Police. Jessica Palmadessa has been there. Chris Without a Hellcat, who some of you may or may not know, he was part of the original crew who was protesting outside the Hollywood Testing Center. And he kind of went on to do his own thing for a while, but we're seeing him back at the ICE protest in Los Angeles. And it's really neat to see a lot of, see Chris come back. And also I saw We in LA as well. I have been just watching multiple channels and trying to follow along. Have you guys been watching it at all? Put a 1 in the chat if you've been following and watching the stories about the ICE protests. I've mainly been watching Los Angeles. Today, of course, is Saturday, and there's a whole protest, No Kings protest being planned. So I think we're going to see a lot of those same people out. It's a lot. It's been a lot. There's, you see a lot of peaceful protests, and then you can see people who are causing issues or who are doing vandalism, which is something that we don't want to see because it completely takes away from the message. You guys know I've had a really crazy, my work outside of YouTube has changed a little bit. And I am not just working from home anymore. And it's been great because I think I was finally ready to engage again. And if you're new to my channel, my partner Tony passed away a year ago this week, actually. Are there shelter in place orders going on around today? Let me know. Feral Cheryl is streaming from downtown St. Pete protests. Definite Trouble Shorts is sharing Feral Cheryl. That's awesome. I'm going to have to check in with Cheryl. Deanna Ross, I have had withdrawals from all of you. I truly have. The other thing that I was watching that I wanted to talk about as well is Aaron Smith Levin's video on growing up in Scientology about the leaked documents. Did you guys see that? Oh my goodness. That just blew me away.
Here's what they're doing this evening, guys. They have got the entire sidewalk covered with parked cars. Guess what the law doesn't allow you to do? The law doesn't allow you to park your car on the sidewalk. So we're gonna have to call the police and inform them of Scientology's transgressions. Okay, I'm gonna leave the camera on Tommy for a little bit while we get some things situated. You know what? Let me actually maybe. Okay. All right. Now, is there anything else? Jamie, real quick. There's a cardboard box in there with all the chalk in it. Can you bring that over? Thank you. Sure. What's that? You want a sign to hold? Okay, here we go. Do you live local? Very cool.
I bought my first house in Dunedin.
Yeah?
I grew up in Dunedin.
Oh, wow.
So I was here long before Scientology was here.
Yeah.